Hello everyone, and welcome to a bit of a bonus episode of the Celeste 90% tutorial. And I'm going to be going over the B-side of Mirror Temple. And if you've been out of the loop with the Celeste speedrun, you might be confused as to why I would be going over a B-side in the 90% tutorial. But something interesting about the way B-sides work is that if you complete a B-side instead of the main chapter, or the A-side as it's sometimes called, you will still unlock the next chapter. So if you get the tape in Mirror Temple, and then just return to the map, and then do the B-side instead, you will still unlock Reflection, and then you can go play Reflection without ever finishing the A-side of Mirror Temple. And in most cases, the amount of time it takes to grab the tape plus the amount of time it takes to complete the B-side is longer than the amount of time it takes just to do the A-side. So in most cases, doing the B-side instead isn't a viable option. But in the case of the Mirror Temple B-side, doing the B-side instead of the A-side can actually be quite a bit shorter. In fact, it can be as much as like 30 or so seconds faster to do the B-side if you do it with an equal level of performance as you would with the A-side. So I'm going to be going over the strats for the B-side. Also, after I go over this, I'll also show you the route for getting the tape in Mirror Temple. But the B-side is, I will say, more difficult overall than the A-side, just because it's a B-side. And there aren't, though, a thing about the B-side is that you don't really need to play as fast to do well in the B-side. It's not as strat heavy as the A-side is. So, like, if you're good at just not dying, even if you don't have very fast movement, you can definitely get better times with the B-side. But if you are a fairly new runner and you're just trying to shave off deaths, I might suggest just doing the A-side until you're more confident, because this switch to the B-side isn't really too important until you get like low 32 or 33 minute runs. Like, you can definitely get very good times with the A-side, but if you want, go ahead and practice both. You might find that you're better with one than the other. It's mostly down to preference until you start getting really good times. But eventually I do think you should make the switch to the B-side, and better late than never, because it's a very important trick to do. It's probably one of the biggest saves in the game. So the first room is really just a bunch of hypers. You can do hypers, you can do wave dashes, you can do grounded ultras if you know how to do those, but you just want to get out of this room as soon as possible. And when you go into the next room, there's just going to be a little block that you have to jump over. So just make sure that you're in the air when you enter the next transition. So you can dash into this bubble, and there are kind of two different options to do this room. You can either hyper off of here or just dash forward into the bubble. They're about the same. But then you can either dash up out of this bubble to hit the button, fall to the bubble, and then do that. Well, not that, but you can hit the button first and then go down to the bubble. Or you can dash straight down to the bubble and then go up to the button. And I think going down to the bubble and up into the button might be ever so slightly faster. I'm not certain, you might have to test those both out, but they're pretty close to the same, so you can do whichever you prefer. When you take this bubble, you just want to wave dash out of the room, and then it is possible to like ultra into this bubble from the transition, but you don't want to like brush against this ground or else you might miss the bubble. So it might be a little safer just to take the momentum a little further forward and then dash straight down into this bubble. But this room really doesn't have any like speed strats to it. You just want to do it as you would expect to do it. Just be sure to dash out of bubbles whenever you can and fast trigger the bubbles whenever you can. You can fast fall to this bubble if you get your position right though. And then when you dash down right out of that last bubble, You can hyper when you hit the ground here, or you might hit the ground at the start of the next room, in which case you'll just have to jump. But you can either just jump when you hit the ground here, or hyper into the next room. If you do decide to hyper into the next room, you'll have a little more momentum than if you just jumped, which means that the down dash here in this room will be a little harder to line up. But regardless of which of the two you do, you want to dash straight down onto this moving block in front of me to make it go up, and then you want to use the block to boost yourself up. And then you just want to dash left into that to boost yourself to the right. And then with this last block here, you can jump to the you can jump over it before it starts to rise to get to the right a little sooner. Or you can just jump off of it and get onto the wall like that. Or if you want, you can just wait for it to retract a little bit so that you can then use the retracting momentum just to land yourself right onto this corner. And when you land here, you can like extend dash jump and then wall boost out of the room. You can dash straight forward and then wall boost off this side. Or if you don't land, in order to dash forward and then wall boost off of there, you have to land on the very like left edge of this platform. If you land a little further forward, like right here, you're just going to want to jump and then wall boost. And I think that's the fastest way. Because you want to enter this transition on the right side if you can, because you're going to be moving to the right in the next room. So wall boost off of this wall. You want to wave dash off of here from the transition. And then if you time an upright dash correctly, you can corner boost off of this corner. But it's really not an important corner boost at all. So if you miss the corner boost, like I got the corner boost there, but if you don't get the corner boost, which it is a pretty tough corner boost to line up, but if you don't get the corner boost, you just want to keep moving forward into the next room. Don't bother landing here because you need to extend a hyper at the start of this room anyway. If you miss the corner boost, just keep moving forward until you enter this room. Coming up at the end of this room is the most important and the most important strat in the entire chapter, and also one of the riskiest strats in the entire game. It is a very interesting strat known as Bubs drop. It's kind of in the line of strats like Demo Dash and Lake Skip, where you're kind of exploiting a certain mechanic in order to get a really big skip, but it can also be really risky. And I think it's by far the most risky of those three strats. Like Demo Dash, if you take the checkpoint, will only cost you like maybe 2 seconds per failed attempt, and you can get it on your third try and still save time over not doing Demo Dash. In the case of Bubs drop, which I'll show in a bit, if you do fail this strat, you will lose about 12 seconds, and possibly even more if you struggle with this room. So you need to get Bubs drop with a lot of consistency, and it's also a very hard strat, so you're gonna have to practice this one a lot. But this room right here, before Bubs drop, isn't too difficult. You want to extend a hyper so that you have your dash back when you land on this block over here. And then you can either fall to this block, or you can wall jump and then land on this block. You want to climb to the very top of it, and then you want to dash upright when you're overlapping that crystal so that you get your dash back. And then there are a few different ways that you can do the rest of this room. You can dash twice to get onto the right side of this. Regardless of which strat you do though, you want to land and grab on this right wall here. Some other ways you can do this room are you can save this dash and then jump to the other side. That was kind of difficult because you have to jump around the block while before it starts retracting, or else you'll die. But if you do hold on to your dash to the very end, you can wall boost to the wall at the end. So you can wall boost there, and if you do it really quickly, that's one of the fastest ways to do it. There are a few like corner boost strats you can do here too. Like you can, if you time it right, you can corner boost off of there, but since there is a spike on that block, I wouldn't suggest going for it. It's a very hard corner boost to line up. And there's some other weird things you can do like that. I don't even know if that's faster. But you just want to find a consistent strat that gets you here, and you don't need your dash right here. But this is where you do the Bubs drop in the next room. So the way the Bubs drop works, and I'm gonna go over it first. So this is the method I do. First of all, I just use both my dashes to get to the right side of the block, and then I jump around the last block. which is one of the slower ways to do it, but I find it really consistent because you can pretty easily get around that next block. You just have to make sure you land high enough on the last block that you can jump over it before it retracts. Like that. So I'm gonna explain Bubs Drop before I do it. So Bubs Drop works by exploiting two things. One is vertical transitions, and the second is checkpoints. So normally when you go upward through a transition, and in fact I'll just do that right now to demonstrate, you'll notice you automatically, regardless of how quickly you move up into a transition, you'll always enter the room with a fixed amount of momentum. Meaning if you slowly crawl up into the transition, you'll still have a fixed amount of momentum. If you wall boost into the room, it'll actually decrease your momentum, and you'll enter with that fixed value. The only way to really enter a transition with a lot of upward momentum is to buffer a wall boost from the transition. But the reason why that mechanic is there with the fixed upward momentum is to force you to land on this platform right here. So if there's a platform that stops you from going down the transition again, that momentum boost will force you to land on it. So normally there's no way for you to go back down from here. But you can actually, if you do a very quick wall jump, you can actually cancel out some of that upward momentum just enough so that you fall back down through the transition. And that's what really causes the Bubs Drop to work. So if I go back to the room I was in before, what you need to do in order to perform the Bubs Drop is you have to wall jump right when the transition ends, and you must hold jump for no more than 2 frames. So it's a very small window, but you can keep in mind that you can buffer jumps from the transition, just as you would with like wall boost or hypers like that. But you would buffer a wall jump from the transition, and you have a 5-frame window to buffer the wall jump. So as long as you press the jump button within 5 frames of the transition ending, you only have to worry about releasing the button during that 2-frame window. But of course, you still do have to release the jump button during a 2-frame window, which is very tight, regardless of whether or not you buffer the jump. And if you press and release the jump button during that buffer window, you won't wall jump at all. So you need to press the jump button during the buffer window and then release it within 2 frames after the transition ends. And I will attempt doing it kind of the normal way for a little bit, though I kind of have my own method for performing Bubs Drop that I find makes it a little more consistent. But if you just kind of like jump into the transition, you can do that. So as you saw, I just tap jump very quickly. Just a very short tap, and I make sure to press it before the transition ends, and I'm actually surprised I got that 3 times in a row without a setup. But you need to tap jump right before the transition ends and release it immediately after the transition ends. And if you do that correctly, you'll fall back into the previous room. And what you can do after you successfully perform the Bubs Drop and see, if you hold the button too long, you'll land on this platform anyway. That's why you have to time the release within that 2-frame window. What you can do is then, if you immediately retry after the transition ends, you'll respawn over here instead of at the start of the room. Because the way checkpoints work is every room has a set of specific respawn points. So you don't respawn wherever you entered the transition. There are actually a few fixed respawn points that are placed in every room. And when you enter the room, it'll set your respawn point to whichever one of those fixed points is the closest. So there's one of these fixed points at the left edge of this room, and one at the right edge of the room where I'm standing right now. So when you come back down to the upper transition, it'll actually set your respawn point to this point right here, because there is no respawn point at that upper transition. And that allows you to abuse the respawn to retry and then teleport yourself to this room. And I'm gonna go over kind of my technique for timing Bubs Drop a little better. if you find yourself consistent and can just get the muscle memory to do it quickly, then go ahead and do it quickly. I just kind of have a little setup that allows me to actually use the levels music to help time the button press. So if I get to the wall again. What I do is I get myself onto about this pixel right here. You can go like maybe 1 pixel further down from here or 1 or 2 pixels further up from here, depending on how you time it. But if you hold onto the wall about this pixel right here, you can see where my foot pixels kind of lined up, similar to what you would do with a demo dash. If you do a full jump from here, and then wait 1.5 beats, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, kind of like that. You can kind of hear it in the piano, for example. You can use that 3rd beat to time the jump, and then just release it as quickly as possible. Or you can press the jump a little bit before the beat, and then try timing the release on the beat. But what's nice about this method is that not only does it give you a cue for when you should press the button, like there's really no visual cue for when you time the Bubs drop. If you try to do it quickly, you just have to do it with muscle memory. But this gives you an audio cue that you can use. And what's nice about it is that you can adjust your starting position based on how late or early you tend to time it. So if you do the musical method and you find yourself frequently jumping too late, so by jumping too late, that means you end up wall jumping after a transition, but you end up landing on the platform anyway, then what you should do is move a little further down from here so that the timing lines up better. And if you find yourself going a little too early, and if you go too early, that means you won't wall jump at all because you released the button during the buffer window. And if that happens, then you're going to want to go a little higher than where I am now. But if you just use the music, you can use it to time the jump and then time the release. So I'll try to do it now. And I actually was a little slow there, so like you can tell it's not perfectly consistent, but it's kind of the only cue I know of to help line it up. Kind of like that. 1, 2, 3, go. And I held the button a little too long there, but you see how it works. So I'm gonna go on. But yeah, you have to practice this particular strat a ton, because what happens if you fail and you end up in this room is that either you just like do the rest of the room and get the key that's right here, and then you can go down, unlock this door, and then you can take the bubble in this room. And then if you take this bubble all the way to the right, you'll also end up here. But you'll notice that took a lot longer than just dropping through the transition and warping to here. That's about maybe 20 or so seconds that you lose if you end up doing the rest of it. So yeah, Bubs drop saves about 20 seconds in the chapter, which is why it's such an important strat. Another alternative, and the alternative that most people go for if you do fail the Bubs drop, is that you actually return to the map. And the reason you return to the map is because you'll have unlocked this checkpoint right here, which gets you right back here, and then you can attempt Bubs drop again. So if you do it this way, instead of losing, if you get Bubs drop on your second try, instead of just doing the rest of the rooms, this will cost you about 12 seconds or so, between 10 and 12 seconds instead of 20 or so seconds. So if you're consistent enough with Bubs drop to get it on your second try at least, then do it this way. But if you find yourself extremely inconsistent with Bubs drop, to be honest, you probably should just keep practicing it until you're consistent with it, or just go back to 5A, because like foregoing Bubs drop basically means you won't gain any time over 5A. So Bubs drop is really what the strat that makes 5B faster, so you need to get consistent with it. Once you do get Bubs drop, however, you're gonna respawn right here, and you can like dash jump into the next room or just dash forward, or you can walk into the next room and then jump and corner boost off of here. But there are kind of two strats for here. the slow strat is to jump over this and then land here, and then you can either just dash down and then jump to the wall, or to get a little higher, you can extend a dash jump off of here. And then you want to climb to the top of this block, jump, and then momentum boost off of this block up here from as high as possible. And I went a little too high there because I was paused. But you want to land on this block, climb to the top of it, and then jump to this wall. And you're going to run out of stamina before you have enough time to climb out of the room. So make sure that you wall jump out of the room, because you're going to be low on stamina. The other strat, which is the faster strat, involves a really tight wall jump and up dash to this block up here. So if you... And this helps with 2 jump buttons, but you need to jump from here to this left wall jump off of it, and then dash straight up. And if you do this all correctly, you should be able to just barely grab the bottom of that block up there. But I don't usually go for this strat because it's extremely tight. Like, you see I'm like pixels away from reaching the block. But it's possible to get it. Like that, and then you jump around. And you have to jump around it before it starts retracting and then jump off of it, which, like, it's a lot of work, but it's a pretty big skip. And I don't go for that because I have trouble even getting around that block at the end. But if you can do this consistently, go for it, but it's not too important. You can just do it this way if you have trouble. This is a very cycle heavy room right here, so I might have to like warp back to the previous room to show you the entry cycle. But what you need to do is you want to get into this first red bubble, not immediately, but slow down just a little bit so that you can fast trigger it and get past this first shuriken. And then you want to quickly climb up that wall on the left, and then get into the second bubble. And again, you don't want to go too fast or else you'll hit the shuriken. And from death, you can just quickly dash jump into the bubble, and you'll have pretty much the same cycle as the entry cycle. I'm going to wall boost off of that wall, and then basically do the rest of the room normally. So that wall boost is really hard to line up sometimes. What kind of helps is if you just try to dash out of that bubble as soon as you possibly can, because it's a lot easier to go, you're a lot more likely to go too late when attempting to line up the wall boost than too early. So if you just remind yourself to go as soon as you possibly can, you'll usually get the wall boost. You can't go too high there at it. Also on the death cycle, you can dash into that bubble to get a slightly faster cycle, but then you want to do the rest of the room normally, more or less. You want to fast trigger all these bubbles, and if you're fast enough, you can then dash left out of the last bubble and then just weave your way around the last shuriken. You can also dash up left out of the last bubble to get through the gap a little bit sooner, but you might end up with a slightly tighter cycle on the last shuriken. So you can just pick and choose whichever one you find more consistent. But when you land right here, you just want to start doing a bunch of hypers. There's a corner boost that you can do near the end that isn't all that important, but you're going to want to reverse hyper in order to get into this last bubble over here. So you want to get up here so you can like hyper bunny hop and then bunny hop off the button, or you can try corner boosting off of here, which will get you all the way up to here. But you want to either, if you're in midair, you can reverse wave dash, or if you land here first, you can reverse hyper. If you want to reverse hyper and then dash forward into this bubble, and then just immediately take this bubble up. And then from here, you can either dash up left out of the bubble, or dash down to the platform and then jump onto the spring. And they're basically the same. You can do that, or you can do that. But you wanna try and land after taking the spring. You wanna try and land higher up on this block so that you can climb up onto the spring as soon as possible. Because if you land really low on that block, you're gonna have to start climbing sooner, and it becomes hard at a time. So you just need to time climbing this up to the spring so you get in between these two spikes, and that just comes down to practice. There's really no strat to it. When you land here though, you can jump and then dash forward to the button, or you can dash jump to land here and then dash to the button. But depending on what you do, if you dash forward into the button, like it's not going to happen now that the button's pressed, but if you dash forward into the button and then input a reverse dash jump, it'll actually make you do a reverse hyper instead. So just be ready to go really fast and then essentially dash straight down into here. Or if you dash forward into the button, you can just do a quick hyper and fall down here. But you will just want to walk to the left from here, jump to break this crumble block faster, and then dash straight down. And then you just want to dash left from here. Don't try to hyper or anything, because you want to wall jump off this wall. So here is another spike jump. It's one of the hardest spike jumps because unlike the one in Resort or in Ridge, you actually have to do a neutral jump with the spike jump. So you need to do a wall jump off this wall, but then you need to do a neutral jump off the spike. And I would recommend jumping to the right from here, and then just holding right the whole time. So you wanna, I usually jump with my first button from here, jump with my first button from here, and then jump with my second button to do the spike jump. And it's a little difficult to line up, so. And actually I do jump to the right from here. So you can see you can do a spike jump like that. But the spike jump has to be a neutral jump, because if you do a regular wall jump, you'll actually wall jump into the spikes on the left. And a neutral jump doesn't send you as far off the wall. So if you do a neutral jump, you can get full height out of the neutral jump and then dash up to get out. And this is a very difficult spike jump that takes extra practice. So you should be able to just barely land on the platform at the end though. So like that. So right after you wall jump off this wall, you need to let go of right or left, whichever button you're pressing. Because as long as you do the wall jump while holding right or holding left, you will do the full distance wall jump. Which means that you don't need to keep holding left after you do the wall jump. You can just let go of right or left immediately after this jump. And you should not be holding left or right because you have to do the neutral jump off there. So like that. And I just barely made it onto this platform, so it's very tight. And this is another strat that you'll have to put extra practice into, because I think it's the hardest spike jump in the any percent run, or at least of the important ones. Like, it's a lot harder than Resort or Ridge spike jumps. So coming up next is another very cycle-based room, but as long as you get the starting cycle good enough, the rest of the room will pretty much line itself up for you. So when you land here, you're gonna want to like hyper bunny hop and then dash up into the next room, or just hyper and then dash up into the next room. Doesn't matter too much. But from here, you just want to move left from the transition, and then you either want to just dash up into the bubble or wall boost into the bubble, but you're going to have to slow trigger this bubble, so just wait for it to trigger itself either way. So wall boosting into it isn't all that important because you need to wait. So you want to dash up into this bubble, let it trigger itself when you go to the right, and that'll give you the correct cycle, and then you want to dash down to the second bubble. And then you don't want to fast trigger the second bubble either, but you don't want to slow trigger it either. You want to wait a little bit to let the shuriken move out of the way, and then manually trigger it at the right time. So this is like one of the only cases where you neither want to fast trigger or slow trigger the bubble. You have to time it manually. In the death cycle, you want to immediately get into the first bubble and fast trigger it, and then the rest of the room will be more or less the same. So then if you just dash left, so you dash, if you time the second bubble correctly, you can just dash left through this gap, and then you can either jump and then dash in between these next two gaps, or I find it a little easier just to do kind of quick dash jumps. But once you get to this point and you fast trigger this bubble, the rest of the room is pretty straightforward. You want to dash either right, or you can go a little sooner if you dash upright out of this bubble. You can also wall boost out of the bubble if you dash up while you're in that little gap above me, which will give you the fastest cycle, but it's also the hardest way to do it, and it gives you a very tight cycle at the end. So I would just recommend dashing upright. You can do it a little sooner than that, but it doesn't matter too much. You'll still get a decent cycle either way. You want to go over this one and under this one, just by climbing up and down a little. And then the moment you clear this shuriken, you want to start climbing up so you can jump into that bubble as soon as possible and fast trigger it. And then this last shuriken is moving pretty quickly, but regardless of which cycle you get and how fast you move through the room, there's never a point where it's impossible to get through this gap. So you just want to get close to the gap, and then the moment the shuriken's out of the way, you just want to dash through it. And if you want to go really high, you can even like kind of demo dash through the gap in order to evade those upper spikes, but I'd recommend going through the middle. So you saw, like, I just waited for the shuriken to move out of the way so I can dash through it. You're going to have to manually time that dash, but it's pretty lenient. But then you just take this bubble into the last bubble, you fast trigger the next bubble, and then you just need to time the up dash. And then you're right here. And then this is pretty much the exact same as the mirror in Temple A. So what I do is I wave dash or extended hyper through here, I dash up, I dash down here, and then there are lots of different ways you can do this. You can like reverse hyper ultra, and then go over here, which is a little tough because you need to get onto the button a little quicker. So you can't dash upright doing that, or else it takes a lot of time to fall down to the button. So what I do is I reverse dash jump to get onto this platform. Then I can do 2 wave dashes and then dash down to the next button. And then just like in Temple A, you have to wait a little bit for the curtain to fall. So you don't need to go too quickly to the curtain, but you want to do it a little more quickly than I did just then. But you know, skip the cutscene when the curtain falls. It's the exact same as Temple A. And now you're in kind of the second half of Mirror Temple. And to be honest, the worst of the chapter is already behind you. Like, Bubs Drop is definitely the hardest part, and then there are some pretty tough cycle rooms as well. The rest of the chapter does have a few tricky secret manipulations to it, but it's not all that inconsistent. This room can be a little bit tricky though if you try and do it really quickly. But you can go left or right here. It's a symmetrical room, so I usually just go right because it's natural to me. But you just want to fall through these gaps, and if you just hold right, you'll go a little slower because you brush up against that wall, but if you just hold right, you'll always reach this wall right here. So you can just hold right and walk right and then land here, in which case you want to wall jump off both of these walls, or you can just wall jump off the first wall. If you wall jump off the first wall, you can dash up left into the button. Just note that if you miss the button, you're basically dead. So a slightly easier way to hit the button is to wall jump off both of these walls, this wall, and then dash up into the button, kind of the normal way. So yeah, just brush up against this wall jump off both of these walls, and then once you hit this button, since you dashed straight up, if you dash up left into the button, you might have to adjust yourself to line up with this gap. But if you dash straight up to the button, you'll pretty much be lined up automatically, so you can just fast fall to the crystal. And then if you dash right after you grab the crystal, you'll also be lined up with the second gap pretty much automatically. So you can just fast fall here, dash right, fast fall here. And then you can mostly fast fall through almost the entirety of the room. It's not as dangerous as it looks because these gaps are pretty big. So you can fast fall through here. You want to dash right into this button. You might want to stop fast falling about here so that you can time the dash right a little bit more easily, but then you want to wall jump to the next crystal. So let me do this whole room all in one big sequence because pausing makes it a little tough. So kind of like that. So you'll notice I fast fell as much as I can, and if you dash right from this crystal, dash right here. If you dash up left instead of straight left, first of all you'll be higher up, so you have more time to line up the gap, and also you'll end your dash a little bit closer to the spot that you're supposed to go. If you want to dash left, straight left, which is a little bit faster, you might want to move to the right a little bit after grabbing the crystals so that you're also better lined up. But dashing up left here is just the safest way. And then you can fast fall the rest of the way if you line it up correctly. And then there is that dash to the right at the very end. That's a little bit tricky, so you might want to stop fast falling there. In fact, what I do at the very end of the room is I actually brush up against the left wall to slow myself down even more, so that I can then time this last dash very easily. And you can even like grab the last wall if you want. You just really don't want to die at the end of this screen because it's a long one. So I brush up against the left wall. You can grab the left wall. You can just stop fast falling and then time this. You just want to get through this gap as safely as possible. And I even demo dash to the right to make it a little easier to evade these spikes up here. From here though, you can either like hyper once and then hyper again, or you can extended hyper and then ultra. But when you get into this room, you'll either want to bunny hop and then dash up left through the first switch, or extended hyper and then dash up left. And then you want to wall jump off that wall. And if you wall jump with the correct timing, you'll pretty much automatically bonk the Seeker. Like if you go a little too soon or a little too low, you might run into the Seeker's face. But this is actually a lot more consistent than it looks. What's not as consistent is where the Seeker ends up going when you bonk it. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll bonk it right into the lower switch, in which case you can exit the room right away. But usually what will happen is it'll just barely miss the switch, and after you bonk the Seeker, you just want to keep moving right so you get over here. And if you did hit this Seeker into the switch, this door will be open, in which case you can just exit. Otherwise, you just want to wait for it to the shockwave to trigger it. And then you want to just hyper into the next room. You can also enter this room with like a wall boost, like that. And somehow you can actually aggro the Seeker into a position where it's even easier to bonk it into the switch. But it's kind of a hard wall boost to line up, as you can see. And I'm not even aggroing the Seeker correctly for some reason, so probably just go for the left dash, or the up left dash here. And then, yeah, if you get lucky, you can get the door to open even sooner. But you want to hyper into the next room and then be ready to extend a hyper at the start of the next room. So you want to extend a hyper off of here and then dash forward to bonk the Seeker. And if you hold jump when you bonk a Seeker, like you don't really do this at all in Temple A, or maybe you do it a few times in Theo, but if you hold jump when you bonk a Seeker, you'll actually go a little higher. So you want to dash forward and hold jump when you bonk this Seeker, and then you want to jump over this first pillar, like that. And then you can either wall jump, you can fast fall through here, and then either wall jump off the left wall to line yourself up with the crystal, or you can just slow fall through here and then line up with the crystal just immediately. And then you want to, when you're overlapping the crystal, if you go a little bit further forward than this and then dash upright, you'll actually hit the button at the very end of your dash, like that. And then there are kind of two ways to do this last part. One way is to neutral jump around here, jump up to the top of this, and that Seeker shouldn't have been there. I was going too slowly, but if you jump straight up, and then if you jump straight up from that corner, and then the moment you fall back down onto the corner, you then wall jump over, you can dash upright to the button, bonk the Seeker, and then get out of the room. What makes that a little bit tricky is that if you start holding right a little too soon, like just before you do the jump off the corner, you might land on those spikes on top of the pillar. So the way I do it, which I find a little safer but is slightly slower, is to climb up the left wall. And then I just climb up a little bit, I wall jump, and then I corner boost off of there. And I went a little too soon there, but you can see how that's a little bit safer because you're moving right the whole time. And the same works. You can fall after bonking the last Seeker. You can fall a little further and then dash upright. Or what I do is I just demo dash under that ceiling to get to this wall. But when you land here, you want to dash into the next room. Don't hyper into the next room because you need to extend a hyper at the start of the next room. And if you're going too fast, you won't actually have enough room to get your dash back. So you want to just dash into the next room and then immediately extend a hyper here. And then like with the previous room, you want to extend a hyper here, dash forward to bonk a Seeker, and hold jump to make sure you get more height. And so after you bonk the Seeker, you need to use the Shockwave to knock yourself over to this block right here. If you do, after bonking the Seeker, if you do a full wall jump, so you just jump off the first red block and just hold jump, the Shockwave boost will pretty much line itself up for you. So just do a nice and high wall jump off that block, and it'll line itself up perfectly as long as you move horizontally to the correct position. And the Shockwave will get you to this wall without having to dash to it. I just dashed to it out of preference, basically, because you're going to bonk the Seeker, which will give your dash back anyway. But if you do hold on to your dash, you can dash straight down to the Seeker to bonk it into a slightly more advantageous position. You just need to be holding right when you get the Seeker boost. And then you'll get to the wall. And then if you save your dash, you can dash straight down to bonk the Seeker straight down and then get to the left wall. But what I find a little easier is, first of all, dashing right and then just kind of doing that. And then you need to, this one doesn't have really a setup for it, you just need to time it. But right when the Seeker is about to detonate, you want to fall the left of it, dash through it, and then dash through it so that the moment it detonates, the Shockwave boost gets combined with your dash momentum to catapult yourself all the way to the end of this room. And you don't really need to dash in front through it, but it just gets you there a little bit faster. So you can, if you time it correctly, you can just jump. But the dash actually keeps you suspended in the air a little longer, which makes it a little more lenient, actually. And after you get the boost, you either want to dash forward to the wall and then hop up it, or dash upright and land on this platform. And then you just hyper into the next room, and then get ready to bunny hop. And I just got cornered there. Yeah, hyper into the next room, bunny hop, wave dash, and then you just do a little more wave dashing. So wave dash off here, bunny hop off of there. You might want to stop holding right after that bunny hop off the lower platform, because if you're moving too fast, you might land on the right edge of this platform. You want to land on the left edge of this last platform so that you have enough room to extended hyper. But if you land too far right, you might not be able to do that. So you might want to slow down on the middle platform just so you can extended hyper off of here. And after the extended hyper, you want to dash up. And if you time it correctly, you can wall boost off this wall, which will send you right into the next room. Otherwise, this platform right here will save you, and then you can just jump and then dash out. There is also an ultra dash strat for this room, where you wave dash off this first platform, and then you can ultra to the second, and then ultra to the last one. But you'll notice those were wave dashes because I was going too low. That was an ultra, but I missed the second one. So this ultra strat is a little tough because you need to dash soon enough that you don't wave dash, but also not so soon that you miss the platform. And it's just a lot of things that can go wrong with this. So I would recommend a hyper strat instead of the ultra strat, but I'll try and pull off the ultra strat. Yeah, that's the ultra strat right there, which is slightly faster, but a lot harder. And now we come into Theo, which oddly enough, I think is probably the easiest part of this. And I think it's probably the only part of 5B that's easier than its equivalent in 5A. And it's mainly because you don't have to do as many hyper or ultra strats with Theo in order to do this part well. But when you enter the room, you want to dash upright, and then you can grab Theo first, throw him, and then ultra through him, or you can just hyper through him and then grab him. Not sure why it didn't work that time, but you can just grab him like that and then throw him and hyper through him again. You can also do a Theo ultra there if you want to go a little faster, but you're going to want to stop at the start of this room so you can set up another Theo ultra. So you can do a Theo hyper here, just throw him, hyper to him, and then if you bunny hop right when you grab Theo, you can bonk the Seeker and then throw Theo over. I find it a little more consistent to do a Theo ultra here if you time the jump correctly, since it just catapults you into the top of that Seeker. And if you do it correctly, it pretty much works every time. You'll never hit the Seeker's face. But regardless of which of those you want you want to either throw Theo first, wall jump, and then dash, or wall jump first, throw Theo over, and then dash. But you want to get Theo to land on this spring. So you throw him over, and then after you bounce off the spring, you want to grab Theo so that you're going up as you hold him, and then you can throw him over this wall. And then if you're far enough right, you can just dash straight down to the button, or you can dash down right to the button. And then after you hit the button, you can dash up and then wall jump over, or you can climb the wall and then dash straight down, which I think might be slightly faster. So you can do that. I don't know which method's faster, but they both work pretty well. Ideally, you'll want to throw Theo a little further right than this, and if you find yourself in a really cramped space like this, it might help if you just throw Theo into the wall to get him a little further to the right, but you want to hyper through Theo, grab him after your hyper, and then wall jump off that rightmost wall. Wall jump off the rightmost wall, throw Theo over it, and then there are two things that'll happen after you throw Theo here. Either you'll throw Theo into the Seeker, in which case Theo will bonk into the Seeker and the Seeker will just stop moving for a bit, which will allow you to safely get out of the room. Or Theo will miss the Seeker, but if that happens, your upright dash will almost always land you on the Seeker. So in this case, I landed on the Seeker. And if that happens, you can go forward a little more and then dash straight down to get to the ground sooner. But you want to get out of the room before the Seeker detonates, so be sure that you do the straight down dash to get to the ground sooner. And then you just want to hyper out of the room and grab Theo on your way out. This room is the hardest room in the Theo section, and it has a lot of different strats. I'm just going to go over mine because I don't really know any of the other faster strats for this room, and some of the faster strats are really tough. And this is a really long room, so it might be one that you just want to play a little safe. But definitely look around at other people's runs to see how they do it, because there are just so many different ways to do this room. The way I do this first kind of quadrant of the room is I let the Seeker aggro, and then I throw Theo over it and dash over it myself, so I don't really do anything fast. I just throw Theo and dash over it, and then the moment I land on the button, I push the button, and then I hyper through Theo. And then once I get kind of into the middle of the second quadrant, I throw Theo over the Seeker and dash straight up. And if I time it correctly, I'll bonk on the Seeker to get my dash back. And then I can just dash straight up into the button, and then I just fall back down to Theo. And then I just walk into the third quadrant. I aggro the Seeker, throw Theo over it, and then dash up left into this button. And if you do this quickly enough, you can just fall straight down to the ground. If you're afraid of the Seeker though, you can wall jump off the button to go over the Seeker, which is a little safer. With that, it'll just take a little further to fall to the ground, but you want to fast fall to the ground either way. Hyper through Theo, and then in the last quadrant, you can either evade the Seeker, wall jump off the right wall, and then throw Theo into the gap at the end, or you can bonk the Seeker, and then use the extra height to throw Theo into the end. And if you do bonk the Seeker, you just need to be sure that you hyper through the door the moment it opens, so that you don't get hit by the shockwave. Because getting hit by the shockwave won't kill you, but it'll just make it harder to grab Theo on your way out. So you want to hyper through here before the Seeker detonates. And if you try to bonk the Seeker, but you miss, you can just do the wall jump method, where you wall jump off the door and then throw Theo through the gap. They both work pretty alright. And there's also a strat where when you enter this last quadrant, you jump, you throw Theo, you dash upright and grab Theo again, and that also gets him to the end, but I don't really know how to do that method consistently. Either way, you want to, you've hypered through Theo at this point, so you can just take the momentum to the end. And then you can keep moving forward here. But what you want to do is you want to throw Theo so that he lands on that switch and on that platform. Just keep in mind that if you have some forward momentum before you throw Theo, that momentum will be added to the throw momentum. So the faster you're going, the farther you throw Theo. So if you find yourself entering this room with kind of inconsistent speed, you might want to stop moving before you throw Theo so that you always get the same throw distance. Because if you stand on the very edge of this platform while just walking, Theo will land there perfectly, so you might want to slow down first. But right after you throw Theo, you just want to jump, dash either down right or straight down onto the spring, and then you can either dash forward through Theo, or what's a little safer is to dash upright through Theo. So you can dash forward through him as well. Just keep in mind that dashing forward through him will mean you'll have some forward momentum when you grab him, and you'll have to adjust your momentum to land on the next spring. Dashing upright just gives you more time to land on this spring and makes it easier to line up. And I let go of shift. And then you basically do the rest of the room normally. Yeah, you can, after bouncing off this spring, you can either you can either do 2 wall jumps, you can throw Theo off the wall and dash up through him, you can do 2 wall jumps like that, you can throw Theo and then dash up, or you can throw Theo and then wall boost. And the wall jump is probably the slowest but easiest method, and kind of in the middle is throwing Theo off the wall. Here though, you just want to take a big leap, and the moment you can throw Theo to the end, you want to throw him to the end, hit the switch yourself, and then just dash upright. And if you throw Theo far enough to the right, you can hyper through him to get out of the room a little quicker. Otherwise, you just want to do kind of like a quick Theo dash jump. So if you land like right here and Theo's far enough to the right, you can hyper through him out of the room. Not quite like that, but you know what I was going for. If you do end up grabbing him first without momentum though, you can just do a quick dash jump to get to the end of the room a little faster. And this is another room where if you enter the room with a lot of momentum, it might end up screwing with your Theo throw distance. So you also might want to slow down here, so just kind of walk. But if you are moving at just walking speed, the time that you want to throw Theo after you jump off of here is when you're lined up with kind of the right edge of this vine, so like right there. And so if you just throw him right there, he'll always land on the spring. And then you essentially do the rest of this room normally. Like, you can skip one of the springs. You can skip the second spring just by doing that. And I think it's possible to skip both springs, but I recommend just... Like, you even have an extra dash at the end to save yourself. So this room is really lenient as long as you get Theo to bounce on the first spring. But you want to throw Theo into the next room so that he starts at his default position when you enter. And then coming up next is the music room. It's the last room of the chapter. And there are a lot of different strats here. There's one where the fastest one is one where you ultra into Theo, and then kind of just catapult yourself to the midpoint of the room. But I'll show you some of the easier strats because I don't really know the ultra strat. You might want to look at some other runs. So if you enter this room holding Theo, he won't be in this position right here, and this is where you want him to be. So if you can throw Theo into the room first, do so, but if you carry Theo into the room, you're either going to want to retry to respawn him in this place, or you want to land here and then just crouch and let go of grab in order to place him here. And there's a few different strats you can do with this. You can like hyper, and then if you can do a Theo dash jump off this blue platform. And if you do it correctly, you can get to the pink platform. But you can see it's a little tough. If you try doing a hyper, you might end up hitting the springs instead. And that hitting the springs will just throw you way off cycle, so I wouldn't recommend hypering off of there. So what I do is I actually hyper through Theo, and then I bunny hop off the blue platform, and that gives me enough distance to land on the pink platform at the end. So the moment the blue platform appears, or even slightly before it appears, you want to hyper through Theo, and then be ready to bunny hop off the blue platform. And I actually went a little too soon and ended up hitting it before the pink block spawned, so you might want to not go ahead of time. But when you any strat you do is pretty much going to land you on this platform. And what you want to do is you want to throw Theo, and if you try just doing a regular hyper to get to Theo, what might happen is that the platform will move to the left when you hyper, and it'll actually cancel out your momentum to the right. So if I do that, you notice I tried to hyper, but the left movement of the platform canceled out the hyper. So if you do a really, really quick hyper, you'll actually ignore the momentum of the platform, allowing you to get full hyper momentum. What I find a little safer though is to first dash straight down to ensure that the platform's all the way to the left. And then I can just do a regular hyper to go through Theo. And Theo spends a lot of time in the air, so it's still safe enough. Like that. And then the moment you get Theo to here, you can just throw Theo here, and then you can either extended hyper or extended dash jump from here, and then just dash through the heart. And doing the extended hyper, although that sends you a little faster, you might end up hitting the heart at the very end of your dash, which will cause it to bounce you back. So doing the extended dash jump gets you a little bit closer to the heart before you do the last jump dash. And yeah, so that's Mirror Temple B-side. Most of it is just doing the rooms the normal way and not dying. There are a few speed strats, but you're going to want to practice Bubs drop above everything else. Because that's, if you do run 5B, Bubs drop is going to either make or break your run. It's probably the most important strat in the entire any percent run, just because of how much it saves and how much a failed attempt will cost you. Because it's a 2-frame window that will cost you up to 12 seconds. It's pretty absurd. But in order to do the B side, you need to get the tape in the A side first. And most of it is just the same strats that you would use in a normal any percent run at the A side. So I'm not going to go over the strats at the start again, just because I've already gone through them in my first Mirror Temple tutorial. So I'll just try and get through this first part quickly so that you can see what you would do. Of course, you can still go for Yeet if you want. I didn't quite get it there, but still applies. Okay, so this is the point right here where the routes diverge. So when you hyper into this room, you want to extended hyper off of there, or wave dash off of there, and dash down through here. Or you can just kind of wave dash into this gap and then just fall, like that. But then you want to extended hyper off of here, ultra into the bubble, and then take this bubble to the right. And then you want to dash straight down to get to this platform a little sooner, and then you can like extended dash jump, wave dash off of there, or you can extended hyper, and then if you fall after this corner boost, you can get under this gap right here. I didn't quite get enough height from the corner boost, so doing the extended dash jump and then wave dash is probably the easiest method, but you want to hit this button and then just fast fall out of the room and then hyper out. And then you can either dash straight up and land on the platform, or go a little further forward and then dash up left. They're about the same. But you want to hyper off of here, bunny hop off the first platform, and then dash up in between the spike and the second platform. And then you want to jump to the right so that you can then wave dash off that platform. And then you want to fast fall to the bottom left platform. And then once again, this platform is going to start retracting, so you need to do a very quick hyper in order to prevent it from canceling out your momentum, or dash straight down first before you hyper. And then you can just hyper into the next room, be ready to wave dash. You can do a corner boost in the next room. It's mostly just going fast. And then this room has a bit of a tough cycle to it. So you want to enter this room a little slowly, so that when you enter the bubble, you start moving forward before or after this pink block disappears. Because if you go too fast, they'll bump into the pink block, and then you'll get stuck. So, like, I went too fast there. So you need to time it. You need to go slowly enough at the start that you don't hit the pink block. And then the moment the blue block disappears, you want to dash forward and get onto here. And then there is a cycle skip in this room, a very tough cycle skip, where essentially you need to hyper off of this spot right here at just the right moments so that you can bunny hop off the blue platform the moment it appears. And if you do this all quickly enough, you can actually get through that pink wall at the top right before it reappears. If you go a little too slow, though, you'll end up hitting the pink wall. So, and I just completely screwed it up. So let me try that again. Like, I went too slow and missed the pink wall, but you can try all you want to get this cycle skip. There's no real risk to it. It's just a really tight skip. So if you end up hitting this pink wall, just wait a little bit and let it go away. And then no matter what you do, you're gonna have to wait on this pink platform for a bit. And whenever you're waiting in a cassette room, what you can actually do is repeatedly dash straight down. And the reason why that helps is because dashing, every time you dash, the entire game actually freezes for 3 frames. And the reason for that is just to help you kind of give you more time to react to how you move from a dash. And it just makes the game feel a little smoother. But when you freeze the game for 3 frames, it actually pauses the timer for 3 frames as well. And normally, since both the game and the timer both freeze, it doesn't actually save any time to dash and freeze time more. But since these blocks are based on the music rather than the game time, that means that dashing straight down repeatedly will actually save you 3 frames every time you dash. So it's a very small difference, but it does save a little bit of time to dash down while you wait. Just don't do it too much, or else you might accidentally dash down when the block disappears and hit the spikes. And you need to time an extended hyper off that block so that the pink wall disappears as you hyper. And then you can try ultra dashing to the end. And I didn't get my dash back, but if you do get your dash back, you can ultra into here and then just jump and dash up left into the cassette. You wanna mash to just get out of this menu as soon as possible, and then the moment you enter the bubble, so you don't have to wait till the bubble gets to the end, but the moment you see the bubble appear, that's when you pause, press up, and return to map as quickly as possible. So basically it's pause, up, confirm, and that'll get you out. So you just want to exit the map the moment you enter the bubble. And now you have the tape, you've unlocked the B-side, and you can go do the B-side. So yeah, Temple B is, as I said, pretty hard, so you might want to practice, if you're new, you might want to practice both chapters and just see which one you find easier. If you have a lot of trouble with Bubs Drop, I probably wouldn't recommend going for the B-side at all, because you'll just get better times with the A-side if you don't do Bubs Drop. So once you start gaining faster, though, you do need to make the switch at some point, because doing the B-side is one of the biggest time saves in the entire run. But ideally, if you the times that you'll want to get in the B-side, if you want to be sure that it's the better option, is kind of like aim for at least sub 4s. Like the time that it takes to do the B-side is actually the B-side time plus the tape time. So if you can get the tape in like a minute 30 at most, that should be good. And then the B-side probably shouldn't take you any more than 4 minutes. And if you can get like sub 3:10, then that's really good. But you're gonna want to add your best cassette time to your best Temple B time and just compare that to your Temple A time to see which one is the better option. So yeah, that's Mirror Temple B, and I'll see you later.